Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into the home of $90 314. You already know who your talk man is. So we're gonna um start in a few seconds. I don't mind waiting patient for my people, yeah. Come when you feel the love, cause that's what we giving out. Number love, yeah. We love them dogs, yeah. Calling in the dog movement. They hate on blue, they hate on lay, they hate on tiger, yeah. They hate on me, they hate on the whole game, yeah. Salute, hit that thumb up. Thank you for coming in the building. Hit that thumb up. We're gonna talk about the old time American Pit Bull Terrier breeders that was African American that's champions and merged they did not get. They did not get their merged. They didn't even get their revenue. Some of their dogs were stolen in the time limit they was with. The dogs were stolen. And it's coming from an old school dog, man. I know you two dog men that been around. They had a lot of champions will start off their yard and they couldn't do nothing about it because at that time police won our color. They won color people. So how can you go to a cop that was cool with majority of the city and the state and they was doing what they was doing? So you had to think about how the time limit went and all that. And hold on, I'm looking something up right quick. Hold on. I apologize. I had to look it up. So the man that's up there with John P. Kobe, his name is they John hold on, let me look it up. Johnson. Jack Johnson, Jack Johnson is the man that was cool with John P. Kobe. You know, he was around for a long time. You know, he was a boxer. He was a person that conditioned dogs with Kobe. But when you talk about Kobe, you never hear nobody talking about him. He's in pictures with Kobe. He gave a lot. He gave a lot to the APBT. A lot. He gave. You know, he wasn't appreciated. He was never in them books when you hear him talk about Kobe, and you never hear him talk about Kobe friends and Kobe associates. But you know, and a lot of people that dealt with them because it wasn't easy. Like back in the time when they was getting these American Pit Bull Terriers, they would sell them dogs that they thought wasn't no good, and then once the dog came to be what they wanted to be, they stole it. They stole it back. They started back. Some of them back in the days didn't get their paperwork because they knew that they couldn't be in a group with them. You know, so a lot of the old school color men did not get their respect in the APBT. And nowadays, up to date, you hear it. You hear it a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like when you hear that, little stories about old people that they thought weren't gonna do nothing with the dog. That was the color people. You know, so you think that they was really stealing dogs from each other and knowing that they was gonna put them and they was gonna do the sport with them? Do you really think that they're gonna take this dog to a thing that everybody know? We're gonna say this man dog is missing. You think they're gonna take that? But if they take it from a color person, they can go do whatever they want to do. They can take it to the ring. They can do whatever they want to because back then, you know, in the early 90s, not like 99, like the 1938, 1923, you know, we was as color people, as they called us color people, and I'm using the word color because that was the name that they basically gave us back in the day. That was not, colors. So do you think the color people that had these ABBTs was getting the respect that they supposed to? Do you think that when they stole their dog, they was, they was doing something about it? Who could they tell? We talking about if you go tell that this man stole your dog, it's probably your house can get burnt down, you can get hung. This when we talk about this APBT, it was in the era of racism too. So do you not think that in the process of racism, a lot of marriage and dogs, like a prime example is when you hear stories like, oh, they didn't know where Red Boy came from. Yeah, Red Boy was actually stolen off another person's yard, and it wasn't that how they knew it was an ABBT, because at the end of the day they knew the dog. They had already kept up with the dog, kept up with the man of the dog. So it was complicated to be able to get your doing in the ABBT, because at the end of the day you had so much racism that everything was not known as it was supposed to be. Like, you gotta think about it. Okay, when you hear these stories, you hear about Kobe, you hear about Tudor, you hear about all these people, but you never heard nobody that like Tyrone or you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta think about it. Like, you don't hear names that you would think that fits a color person, because why would you not listen? It's called American Pit Bull Terrier. It's called American Pit Bull Terrier. It ain't like in the 70s when the American Pit Bull Terrier, when these people who make you believe that that's when the American Pit Bull Terrier started. No, that's not when the American Pit Bull Terrier started. It started way back. The first registered dog was John P. Kobe Pitcher. They sat him down in 1909. In 1909. So the phenotype in the dogs has changed from that time limit, and the all the information, because they would tell you, oh, we only know this, how much information. No, because if you go back forward enough, you see the color person in the information. So if I wanted to zip these people out or make these people not ever been in a dog thing, then I would leave that time limit out, because if I give you that time limit, you're gonna find information like I find. Like, the information I get is from doing the research from picture to 2023. That's just how that's how the information I'm getting. I'm not gonna tell you nothing that's not true about these American Pit Bull Terriers, because at the end of the day, we need, listen, if you love the breed of the dog, if you love APBT and you love everything about them, you will want to know the whole research of who all, like who all had their hands on these dogs, and who was the conditioner, and what our color was the dogs, and where, what I'm saying, like, where did these dogs go from here to there, and why did they used to code black dogs, and why did they coded brindle dogs at a certain time, and why they only wanted red dogs? Why do dogs have the name Niggerino? Why do dogs have the name that disrespect the color people? At the end of the day, you start want to know all this information, because this information is according to the breed. You want to know, like, okay, like people say, yeah, pit bulls used to red bait and all that. Okay, you got that, but what happened to the early 1920s? What happened to the 1930s, the 1940s? Because when you get the information from these guys nowadays, you only getting when Derek came in it. But they know, listen, ain't no way if they asking, where did Red Boy come from? Where did Bolio come from? Where did Chinaman come from? Where did Eli come from? Where did Niggerino come from? Then why would you think they not asking who had a hold to these dogs? Who had these dogs? Where these dogs received from? Who conditioned the dog? Who was the yard man at that time? That's the information that they won't give you because they put the color people in it. Because you can't think that this dog franchise up, and then you got a whole picture on my page with Kobe with the man, Kobe and the man together, Mr. Johnson. You got a whole picture with them together. So you think that he's holding the dog and Kobe's in the picture and he didn't have and he wasn't messing with APBTs. You got to think about that. Like, no, he really like it before it came to be before it came to be illegal. It was a sport. It was a sport. Before it came to be illegal, it was a sport. After the sport started having bad situations and people like, oh, that's cruelty. Then the sports went into the illegal thing. But before that, it was a sport. The sport changed over the time of people. It just went out of control. You know, I would say, like the man would say, it was cool until the color people got a hold to it. It was a sport until Tyrone had one, and Tyrone had, because if you think about it, every bloodline that you think of nowadays had that the merits of what you breed. A lot of people breed from the merits of the old dogs, but it's old dogs that don't exist in your pigs. That I heard a story that touch Red Boy, touch some Bodio, touch some Tombstone, touch some Eli, and no merit. The dog don't exist because they didn't put that dog on there because it was a color person dog. So at the end of the day, when you think about it, if you love APBTs, you should want to do more research about the dog. You should want to know, like, how many people had a hold to these dogs? How many people put their blood and sweat into these APBTs that look like you if you're a color person? Because I go with the terms in the time limit to tell you to put your mind into how did the color person didn't get their respect in the game of the American Pit Bull Terrier, how they was criticized, talked about, property stole from them, and who could they complain to? They was color people. At that time, color people didn't have no rights. So if you don't have no rights, I can do whatever I want to do to you. If you can complain about me to anybody, I can steal your dog and I can go take your dog. I can change your dog name. I can hang papers on it. I can breathe something else into it to make it don't look like your dog. Because truly, back then, certain dogs that they didn't want you to know, it was behind the gun line. And when see, a lot of people don't know what this means. When back in the days, the dogs that when they had was mixing coon hound, they mixing it. Them dogs on the gun line. That mean if you came on the gun line back like if you ever seen the Light movie, an older man told me certain dogs were behind the gun line. Gun line mean no ask no question, because you going behind my house and this dog is back there behind there, and that's my secret to win. That's my secret to win. Back in the days, color people, you know, we couldn't, when we had them little pieces of land, that little shack, you know, back in the days, they had nothing but a little bitty shack. Man, listen, it probably was a 1-bedroom shack with 7-8 people living in the shack. Because that's just how it was back then. So when it was a sport, they like, okay, well, if I go out and I make $5, that's gonna feed us for a month. That's the time limit that these APBT came from. That if I take the dog out, $5 can feed us for a month. And then you go out there and they let you in there, or they don't let you in, or somebody say, oh, well, let's just see what this color person dog gonna do. And this color person dog they think, oh, okay, he gonna go in there and our dog is gonna destroy it, and then they realize that no, it didn't destroy it. So they like, okay, maybe it was a myth. Back then they called it a myth. Oh, maybe it was a myth. But once that dog kept on going against, well, back then, if it went against Red Boy, oh, well, maybe Red Boy wasn't up to take it. Or if Bolio, oh, maybe it wasn't Bolio wasn't up. Or Chinaman, maybe Chinaman went up. And then once that dog kept on going and going, that dog got stolen because they needed that. They needed their sauce for their dog back then. What could this colored person do when they stealing them, when they stealing from them, and then it was nothing. And at the time limit in the early 1900s for us to do anything but take what we got. You couldn't do this and you couldn't do that. It was in a short time of living that the life was not what nowadays up here we can speak for ourselves. Back then, if somebody steals stuff nowadays, you go, hey, approach them. Didn't matter what color it is. Back then, if your stuff got stolen, maybe we want to put it farther in the woods or we want to put it at Becky's house. And they're not gonna go to Becky's house because Becky don't own no dog. So said we're gonna put it far back and it ain't gonna see nothing because they wanted to keep their property because of them anything that they had that was working at the time, they did not want them to have it because that was revenue that the colored people can make. They didn't want the colored people to make no revenue. You gotta think about it. $5 back in that time, they didn't want no colored person that they paid in the time of them do something. They paid 50 cents, 10 cents, and this person trying to go out and make $5. And no, we got you on a budget. We know what you're making. We heard you. You work for us. So at the end of the day, if you keep on bringing this dog out and you making this $5, before you know, you have $20. Back then, $20 was a lot. Because if you got to think about it, this when they was, back then, you had the crappiest job. So your revenue, the look like, if you made the 10 cent, that probably fed your family for a day or two. Now you got to worry about if this person going to hire you back to make some more work because they didn't have no set job. They had, if you need me, I can work. But at the end of the day, and the story I heard there was one day a man had went out and betted everything he had except his dogs. He had bet everything except for his dogs. And he had a man come out and he worked. And he told the man, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you something to help you. And the man raised the dog up and the man said, his brother is a good dog. And he said, won't you, let me get him. And I'm going to take him and I'm going to see what you got. And the man took the dog. Dog worked out very good. And the man was like, well, I'll give you this. And the man said, well, I have a bond with this dog. And the man was like, oh, this money I'm gonna give you to feed your family. And he's like, well, this dog is part of my family. When my wife was sick, this dog was there. When my son died, this dog was here. You know what I'm saying? So the dog would end up being a companion for the man. And the man realized, okay, the man said, well, man had a good heart. He was like, well, I take the dog out and I do this and I'll give you a cut and I'll make sure that the dog come back home. Now, at that time, he did not 100% sure knew if the dog was going to come back home. But one thing the man did do when the dog was time to retire, he told the man, oh, I'm through with the dog and it's a good dog. And you had some people back in the days that did deal with colored people because they knew that the way that colored people get treated, some people had hearts and some people just was like, afraid to even tell that they fraternized with colored people. Because back then, if you fertilize with colored people, you couldn't be trust. And majority of the people that was dealing, like if you really do the research on these 70 people that bred them, the people that bred the dog from the 60s, well, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, a lot of them did not like the color of your skin. They was not people that liked it, color people. So you got to think about that. These men that did get to touch the American People Terrier are legends because what they had to go through to even touch them, to condition them, to even get someone to appreciate they dog. Some of them they appreciate a little too much and they stole. Some of them they appreciated enough that they didn't harass them, but they did. So a story I heard from an older man was when they found out that they was um making revenue, then they had to pay them for protection and they had to pay them for, they started penalizing them because at the day in this era of dog, it was always a penalized, and then a lot of them old timer dog men that was colored people, they wouldn't register their dogs. They wouldn't register their dogs because that was given too much leeway to the colored people. Because if you go back, the first registered dog was Kobe's picture, and that was in the early 1900s. So they was not letting colored people register dogs. They was not letting colored people really, like, they was stealing their dog. They were doing everything they could do to try to destroy them as human beings. So the little revenue they was getting, it was kind of hard to get revenue back in them days, because you got to think about it. You a colored person owning something that you work for. Like the one man I'm talking about worked to get his dog, and his dog came out to be something. And then some people had enough revenue over time. People bought dogs, but they didn't get the good dogs because at first it was, we couldn't own the dog, but then they was like, well, we coding the dogs. So back then they was coding the dog. Code mean that they took the life away from the dog. So okay, well, we had 8 puppies and only one's working out, so they coded them. So when they realized that, oh well, I can not code them and sell them to people that I know that the dog is not gonna do nothing, it's not gonna make it to the league. So they sold people dogs that they really didn't assess, because maybe they sold you a dog back then that they thought it was black that wasn't gonna work out, or a brindle dog that they thought wasn't gonna work out, and they sold it to a lot of colored people about them dogs because somebody whispered in the little neighborhood that when colored people had they little shacks back in the little 1-bedroom shack. Oh, I went out, I made $5. You made $5. So okay, well, you save up this money, they selling dogs for $5, or they selling this dog back then. Oh, it's $10. $10 back then was like $100. In this era, it was like $100. So people was buying dogs from people that really didn't like them, but really wanted they financial benefits, their money, their green, their moolah. So in the era of that, you're never gonna you got to do your own research to know these American Pit Bull Terriers, because it's nothing to it but to know it. Because if you learn the era and the time limit, and people like, oh well, I got into American Pit Bull Terrier in the 70s. That was when It was still racism, but it was more that the colored people would go out and work. So why we not gonna get the revenue from the colored people that go out and work? That's just how it was back in the day. That they went that it went from, for a minute it went from it was a sport. It went from sport to greed to over greed to leaving out information with the American Pit Bull Terrier. Because if you listen to the story, people like, okay, they said this purple paper hanging and this person was cheating this way and that way. Yes, when you put greed in front of anything, people are going to cheat. There's like anything, a car dealership will sell you a limit. It's revenue. Um, any way you can cut costs, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do whatever it costs to cut costs. If you gotta lie and cheat and deceive people and sell people dogs, and then when they did sell people dogs, and then these dogs did what they did, they wanted to, if they couldn't buy the dog from you, they stole the dog from you. That's just what it was back in the day. That's exactly what it was back in the days. They didn't give you the self-respect to say, you couldn't say no to them. What a color person gonna say no to me for? Okay, tonight we're gonna go out and get that dog. We talking about a people-friendly dog. A people-friendly dog. How hard back then it was to steal a people-friendly dog. They stole back in the era they stole it. They stole from each other. They stole from the colored people. But the colored people got more like, you gotta think about it. If they told you the whole information, nowadays they say, oh, I'm not racist because I got black people. It was always black people around. So I mean, what do you mean? Like, you got to think about it. You had back then, like the man with Kobe was a boxer. So at that day, if he boxed, he know how to condition his wind. He know how much energy to give out. He was back then. They don't tell you stories. They had conditioners on their yard. They put the dog together. They had somebody go out and condition the dog. They really didn't back then. They really didn't even touch the dogs. They didn't really touch the dog. The only time they really dealt with their dog was when it was time to take it to the show, so they can basically back then where they can be hating on each other. Like, they used to talk stuff, tell stories, you know what I'm saying? You got to think about it. Back then they would freely sit on their yards, and the yard boy hearing stories of, oh, they end this and end that, and we took in dog, and what can end do, and end this and end that, and oh, I so in this dog, and hey, it came to be this, and he didn't want to sell it, and we went over in yard, and oh, Timmy had the shotgun, and he down there pissed on himself, or he pissed on himself. That's the story they was telling, because they didn't have no respect for the yard boy. But the yard boy had to deal with what he had to deal with, because that's how he made his money. If he had to go there and pick up dog boo-boo, or cow feces, or bull feces, or or he had to dig for them to have a garden, that's what his job was. But his goal was to get revenue, to be able to, and a lot of people betting more than they had, because you got to think about it. Gambling is a drug. And you got to think about it. You'll never hear a story where a person gambled that they land away, or they gambled they stock away, or they gamble this and they gamble that. A lot of people sometimes will gamble they weekly pay, and knowing the yard boy, the color boy got to do the work, so they would give them a dog because the yard boy seeing this dog go out and come back scored up, and they like and people breeding the dog. You like, wait, what is going on? So you gotta think about it. When you sitting on the yard with people all day long, you seeing people, move around these dogs. You can't not see dogs going in and out, and dogs. You back then, the job was to dig a hole, and yard boys had a lot. They had something to do with the dog. Some was conditioner. Some was the one that dig the hole for the dog that didn't make it, because or if this dog had black puppies or brindle puppies, then they gotta go. So somebody gotta dig the hole. You think they was digging holes and doing all the work if they had yard boys, or people that they could pay, like they could pay the lowest pay. You know what I'm saying? Or I can give them 5 cents. You know, when you struggling, it ain't easy to get no job. You gonna take back then. You'll take whatever you can take. You'll take whatever you could take. Some people went to the army. Some built railroad. Some was yard boys. If you think of your grandmother and all that, how Nana or whatever you called it, she knew how to cook because she learned from her mama. And her mama, that was a job, to cook. You know what I'm saying? And it was a lot to do with the jobs they can have. Just like if you realize somebody that's old school, they can tell you how to take care of a dog because that's what they granddaddy and they grandma, had the wet dogs, and because they had a hard life, So when you think about this APBT, remember, you want to know the knowledge behind the real deal APBT. You don't want to know from, Pitcher was the first registered pit bull, Pitcher was this, and then you get to Red Boy, Bolio, Tombstone, Chinaman, Eli. Then you get to that information, and that's where I'm gonna go from that way back. No, you want to know everything about the dog because the phenotype of these dogs has changed. The energy of the people say, well, my dog, no, them dogs back in the days had more more energy to be a dog that could catch a hog. These dogs had more energy to phenotype. Their phenotype was more stronger. They had more meat. They had more bone. They had bigger head. They had stronger jaws. The phenotype of the American people has changed, and people say, well, my dog got pedigree, I ain't worrying about nothing. And now you're hearing, if you do this, well, this person was paper hanging, and this person, you don't know where the dog came from, and this person, they say mix this, and this person that, and then we had old timers, they're not going to give you everything, because if they do tell you everything, then they won't sell no puppies, because you will have all the information on the thing. So you ain't gonna never get a person that's gonna bad talk really like the old school, because they put that if they say, oh, well, he added this and he added that, and then they tell you, well, it was hard to beat him. Don't you think if it was hard to beat him, then they're gonna put, well, he hard to beat inside of their dog to make their dog harder to beat. But they're not gonna give that information. They're not gonna get that information. And then they say, well, my dog don't look like that. That's because you had a different sauce that he had. So once you put his sauce in there, you inbreed and you inbreed and you inbreed it until they didn't look like what came off his yard. Because ain't no man that was around with with all the old timers can say he wasn't a part of the scam and the get over. I don't want to hear that bull crap. I'm not gonna let a person buy. I'm not gonna buy that because they all sat in the room and figure how to gank the color people. So you can't say I stood back and I didn't have a problem with that because you gotta think about it. They were freely to use the N word. That was their era. That was their era. So if you thinking that in this time limit, if somebody else was paper hanging, you don't think he taught the other one the talent how to do the paperwork and how to do what they do? They all sit at the same table. They all at the end of the day, yeah, they competition each other. But when it came to scamming and getting over, and they knew each other's secrets, they was giving each other secrets so they can win. They can win. That's how serious it was back in that time that they was giving the secrets to each other. But we color people didn't know the secret, and the color people got these good dogs and they got married and they did what they did, but they're not in the record book of the APBT. Why? Why? That's a prime example. It's just like prime example. I can research the blue American Pit Bull Terrier from the 1930s, but they don't speak of that, and they say, "Oh, they didn't make it enough to be married." If they made it from 1930 to 1950, these dogs can't disappear. That's like the no information can be disappeared. They listen. Something I learned about the color of blue dogs is every puppy is not blue. You get the brownish color, you get this tannish color, you get different color. You might get a black dog from a blue dog. You might get a black dog from a blue dog. So if you keep if you code the blue and you keep the tan and you keep the black, you don't have no problem because that was in the era where they was coding dog that had besides the red color. That's how listen. They didn't want the dog to feature no color but the red color. That's why they put the coonhound in it. The coonhound was a bright red color. That's why if you think about it, the bloodline that they say that the champions come from, they're red dogs. Yeah, you might get a couple of black things in there, but when you think about it, the blood that they are running is red dog bloodlines. You sometimes you got to look at the bigger picture. They run the color of the dogs that they always wanted to be. That you think about it. If you think about the guy that be talking about, he got the best, and he only one got the American Pit Bull Terrier. They run the dog. They run the dogs that they want to actually be, and it's the red dog. If you think about it, every blood basically you might have a couple of black or brand new dogs, that came out to be there, but majority they looking for that red trait. They wanted that red so serious that's why they bred the way they bred. If you think about it, go back in them pedigree and start looking at them dogs, you had, certain people, depending on what yard it was, another trait that people don't realize that they really back in the day did not like solid dogs because the dog that they was putting together had white in it. White in it. Kobe picture, white. If you think about a lot of the, if you go back in the picture, you had Brundlewood white, you had tan and white. Sometimes you have a full body dog, and that full body dog wouldn't make it because it was a full body dog. That's just how serious it was. So if you think about it, anything that was not red was coded for real back in the day. Brand new, black. They'll let white dogs come through. But any darker color, gray, black, brand new, you know, if it had more white than any other color, they would let that pass. They would let that pass. But if it only had full body, full brindle, gotta go. Full black, gotta go. Full, gotta go. Now the red dogs, they could be full, they still gonna let them pass through. Long as that mug had that red, it was so serious that that's how they let the ones with them long ears come through. Because if they're serious, long as the dog was red, the looks didn't matter. Long as the dog worked, the looks didn't. Back then, they didn't care. They cared about color, but then after a while, they stopped caring about color because they knew that you had to buy a dog from them to be able to say your dog was Bolio, Tombstone, Eli, Chinaman. You had to buy a dog from them because that's just how it went. That's how it went. And to this day, they have molded people so bad that when you tell them the research of the dog, they go back to, well, he never said nothing about that. And then they question, like, I done heard him as Schoolboy. I done heard him as Tom Gardner. Oh, have you ever seen a blue dog? Either the blue dog when you should know if you're an APBT lover, you should know this ahead of time. You shouldn't have to ask no mentor. I didn't listen. I didn't get on no YouTube when I was telling people to exist and needed nobody to tell nobody that the dog existed because I know the research of this APBT. You got to know the knowledge of all of it from the color people to now, because these people gave a lot to these dogs. Gave a lot to these dogs. A lot. Sweat, blood, stress, skills, time, gave to these dogs. But if you look it up right now, you don't see them nowhere. You don't see them nowhere in the book of the APBT. Even when you read their books, you never hear about them. How they writing books and telling you about these bloodlines, and in the book it's about them. It's about I spoke to Kobe before, or I had Red Boy on my yard, or I had Bolio on my yard, or I had Chinaman on my yard, or I had Eli on my yard. But you don't hear nothing about the people who went along with them dogs, because they're not going to give you the whole information. This man right here that's next to Kobe, shout out to him. Shout out to him. Because when it first started, he couldn't be on that yard like that. He couldn't be on that yard like that. If you look down here, this man right here was in these dogs in the 1800s. You see a little shack? See a little shack back there? His little shack. In that back picture, the man with the hat on. You see that shack? That's how it was. So when you get your information, you got to remember this dog game. I ain't even gonna call it a game. I'm gonna call it people who has been brainwashed by people who fraud the APBT. I'm gonna say it again. People who fraud the APBT is where they getting their knowledge from. They fraud it. They miss information about every color that can come out these dogs. They miss information every dog that went into these dogs. They did not give y'all, the people that deal with APB, they did not give y'all the whole knowledge of the APBT. They fraud the APBT. That is fraud to a breed. It is fraud to a breed. Because at the end of the day, the stories I heard, a lot of these old timers told on each other and they act like nothing ever. And people be on their channel like they never even, they was, oh, I'm against dog fighting and they own videos and all this. And people jumps in their laps. But these same people that's giving you the information, these same books you reading, is the people that frauded the APBT, frauded the American Pit Bull Terrier by lying, by stealing, by assault. They made that's why the breed to this day is so jacked up, because you listen to the mentor of the people mentors. Anybody that has a mentor that's not going to tell you about the whole knowledge of the APBT fraud. See, when your mentor died, like you can't even tell people, like, if somebody found out some information about one of the old timers right now that they buy dogs from, they won't believe, oh, he hating on him. No, it's not hate. You got to know the information about these dogs. Salute, hit that thumb up. You got to know the information about these dogs. You got to know that they frauded the American Pit Bull Terrier by stealing, by lying, by conniving. They did everything they could do to destroy the next man down. That's what their job was. That's why they did what they did in these dogs, but it was greed. And for some people, we listen, some of them really did love the dog. And if they nowadays you hear stories about the old timers. You hear stories with people like, he lost his mind, or he got Alzheimer's, or he was he was sick. No, when older people get dying, they go hospice, they tell stories. If you look at right now, some man was on his deathbed and told somebody when he was this age, he killed somebody and started murder. They be acting like that. No, them people don't be losing their mind. Them people like, well, I'm about to die, so I'm gonna let the truth out. That's why a lot of these dog men be like, oh no, that wasn't true. If he said, listen, if he's saying this on his dying bed, then he put the dog in there or he cheated this way, believe him. Don't believe the man that's alive that's got his blood inside his dog to say, oh no, he don't know what he's talking about. Because you have his blood inside your dog, you don't want the secret to come out. That's what happening with this APB. All this stuff that you heard, it can be true fact, but then you got these people nowadays that got their blood in their dog. So, that's not true information. He was old and he was senile. He couldn't remember, and he was thinking of something that he don't know, and he was telling the story. No, you got his blood in your dog, so you don't want him to tell this. You want his secrets to be lies, when they the truth. That's how serious the dog game was with the APBT, that they frauded they frauded so much that you got dudes that in their 40s and 50s arguing about knowledge that they don't even know about. And then when you get on knowledge, oh well, he never said it. He's not going to give you everything that went on, because at the end of the day, if they give you all the information, how they stole land, how they stole dogs. It will make you hate the American people who are tearing. They won't make no revenue. You know that, right? It will make you hate the APBT if you knew the whole knowledge behind the APBT. That's why they give you gaps of it and they say, well, we gonna start with Red Boy or Bolio or Tombstone. They want you to start where they know they can control the information. Because ain't no way that you just all of a sudden at a certain time got a hold to an APBT and you didn't want to know everything about the APBT. You gotta remember, a lot of them sat down and talked to the people before them and the people before them. And they did, so they got the information because they sitting on the land and they telling stories. And how do you think that people say, well, I heard a story that Red Boy went against such, and he came out this way. So if you heard these stories, then you had to hear the stories about where did Red Boy come from. And you know, now that they say Red Boy was not a, listen, I'm gonna keep on you. Red Boy was not a found dog. He was a stolen dog off a color person yard. They can say, oh, that's a lie, there's a lie, there's a lie. That is not a lie. Well, listen, ain't nobody gonna tell, ain't nobody can tell you exactly where Red Boy come from, but it's old people that can, that's color people, but you gotta think about it. Oh, a color person went into the APBTs, so they don't know what they talking about. How they don't know what they talking about? In this picture, John P. Kobe got a color person, and I use that word because that's the word they used back in the day. So excuse me by saying that if I offend you, it's not to defend you. It's to catch you up in the time limit. You got to think about it. Kobe has is they consider a color person there. And you think that the color person didn't have nothing to do with this APBT, that they never got, if they stole from each other and they did everything to each other, where do you think we was at? Well, do you think we was left out of the situation? Do you think they didn't want our dogs? Do you think they didn't sell the dogs that came out to be good dogs and they wanted them back because we wasn't privileged enough? We wasn't good enough. We wasn't in a financial class. We wasn't dressing like they was dressing. That we lived around dirt. Do you think that they thought we was good enough to own what they frauded the APBT with? How they stole and lied and breeded this and that and did this. It was all for greed to win. That was the whole goal of there back in the days. To this day, listen, one thing I can't say about this, to this day, it's still the same because you hear people say, I got the best dogs and bad dog for me, and I'm breeding for this and I'm breeding for that. And if you breeding for the APBT and you've been doing it for so long, every dog supposed to turn out. Every dog. You listen, you put by 9, if you got 40 years in this APBT, you supposed to know how to make the ultimate dog. You supposed to know what you listen. That's why a lot of dogs, if you think about it, a lot of people say my pedigree is scatterbred. You know why? Because who they bought the dog from could have scatterbred to try to make the ultimate dog. But you cannot make the ultimate dog when you don't know the sauce that they really put in the dog. You can breed Red Boy with Red Boy. You can breed some Bolio and some Red Boy. You can breed some Tombstone and some Red Boy. You can breed some Chinaman into it. You can breed some Bolio. You can breed all that into it. But if you don't know the whole research behind them APBT, you're breeding blind. You're breeding blind because every one of these dogs that they bred in there, they had traits. They had phenotype. They had good and bad. And when you inbreed the good and the bad. I'm gonna say that again. When you inbreed, you breed the good and the bad. Now they say the kill part, they say, "Oh, if a dog come out looking like the old dog, that's a throwback." No, that's still listen. That you want to see a throwback because once you see a throwback, you know what's threw up in your dog. So if you start breeding your dog so close, and you start seeing smaller nose and height getting smaller, bulldog. If you see average height, long, longer nose, muscle getting bones getting big, and staff. You understand where I'm coming from? If you start seeing long ears and it's your dog howling, coon hound. That's what you got to listen. When you breed these dogs, you got to realize that anytime you inbreed, you see small nose, bulldog. So, you start seeing, think about M step. You start seeing the ears get longer. Coon hound. That's why you want when you breed these dogs, you want to see a throwback so you can know how they made the makeup of your APBT. That's what you want to know. If you in here, you haven't hit a thumb up, hit the thumb up. But you want to know that. You want a throwback. Some people like, no, I don't want no throwback. Yes, you do. You want to know what. Listen, they've been breeding these dogs, inbreeding and breeding it for 40, 50, 60 years. Some bloodline 70, some 80. Some 100. And at the end of the day, if you keep on playing with that, you're going to see what was in that mug down the line that you wanted to know. Hold on. I'm back. I apologize. But that's what you do want. That's what you do want to do when you dealing with these dogs. You want to know what colors come out. You're not gonna know everything. You can read many books that they publish, or you can read many information they want you to know. But you want to know at the end of the day. You want to know who had a hold to these dogs, what color they was, what was the experience with the dog, what was his conditioning time. Like who was the best conditioner. People always ask who was the best. Who would you think if you ran this dog against this dog? Them dogs on different. Listen, them dogs on different time limits, different conditioners, different owners. You know what I'm saying? You can have somebody own it red. You can have somebody own it 3 different bloodlines and have in them 3 different bloodlines had two different or 3 different conditioners. People that condition them dogs, and you would say that, oh, well, I believe he would have know because you might have had a condition on there at that time that was conditioning crazy. Like he know how to get the dog to his peak. He know how to before we weigh in, how to weigh him, how his weight supposed to be. You back then you had a lot of people that work with these dogs. Nowadays, nowadays it's way different. It's way different. It's way different. So if you are APBT lover and you down for the breed, and you think that this is your time where you into this breed, where you think is this dude running game on us, or is this the honest truth? But you know what the killer pop out is? Nobody's gonna share this video for people to get the knowledge. This information, but this information is not gonna be used like it should be used, because I'm giving it to you real deal, Holyfield, and I just know from old timers that was in the same time as the rest of them that said it's a lot of information missing, and there's a lot of men there that's not in these paperwork that you guys looking at. That it's a lot of information that's not, a lot of dog men who's not in the paperwork. A lot of dogs who were stolen, taken from their owner, is now have different name, and y'all, oh, he bred such and such. No, he stole such and such. He didn't raise him. He didn't raise him. He stole him. He took him. He took them. He took him out of straight out somebody's backyard off a chain. But you never hear that information, because guess what? If they tell you the truth of who dog that was and where that dog come from, then that'll take a lot of people murders away. That'll take a lot of people credit away. Because if you think about it, when you look at these dogs, when you see them in a prime, and when they was working out and they was into the sport, they were smaller. But after they did what they did and they did what they did, look how them dogs' body went. That's because they didn't have that dog wasn't originally conditioned and bred on their yard. That dog was bred and conditioned on somebody else's yard, and they couldn't condition that dog like it needed to be. That's why you look at start back looking at them dog pedigree like, dang, that dog did look smaller when he was, you know what I'm saying, this, that. Look them up. And you'll realize that what I'm saying is not the truth. But I'm gonna let you go. I've been out here for hours. Hit that thumb up if you haven't. God bless you. You have a nice rest of the day.